Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of the DFS Hockey Report. It is Friday, January the 2nd. I'm Brock Seguin. As always, we've got our friend Zach Laing with us here. Sorry, Zach had a meeting that went a little bit later than scheduled, so we're a few minutes behind schedule here as well. But Zach, it is Friday. The Winter Classic is tonight. I guess you could call it that. It's being played inside, basically. And in Florida, and reports yesterday, at least I saw from Will Cooley, said the ice was awful. So should be fun. And that honestly is going to be the most fun game of the night. I guess actually Anaheim, Minnesota should be the most fun game of the night. And then you have Vancouver, Seattle. And I tweeted out earlier, like, I can't think of a game I want to watch less than that one. So Zach, how you doing today on this Friday?
Yeah, I'm doing all right. Struggling to get over last night's slate. Did not go very well for me, which is pretty frustrating. And also cannot get over the fact that we have a winter classic in sunny Florida. So I don't know what's going on there. Well, I mean, I guess I do know what's going on there. But hey, back in my day, you used to have to wear a toque over your helmet to participate in the Winter Classic. Evidently not the case here.
Yeah, I feel like they've lost the plot a little bit on the on like these outdoor games. Like, I don't know. I feel like that's not really where it should take place, but whatever. Not my decision. So I would like to see them play like even in the middle of nowhere on a like Lake Jasper again or something. You know what I mean? Something fun like that than just play in a baseball stadium in Florida. It just doesn't really make any sense. But we're here to talk DFS. We're going to break down this 3-game slate, whether we like it or not. We've got I imagine both teams are going to go with their number one goalie, so it should be Bobrovsky and Shesterkin here in the Florida Classic. And then Lucas Dostal goes for the Anaheim Ducks. It's going to be Philip Gustafsson for the Minnesota Wild. Then we're likely going to get Thatcher Demko for the Vancouver Canucks. I think it's like all but confirmed. Jeff Patterson from Canucks Army did say that basically it's going to be Demko. It was a weird way for me to like say he's confirmed because he didn't feel like officially confirmed, but basically, they're wearing their black jerseys tomorrow, and Lankinen was using his black jersey equipment today, and they're wearing blue tonight. Demko was in the blue equipment, plus he was in the starter's crease, so he's essentially starting, and basically as confirmed as likely can be. Then Joey Daccord projected to get the start of the second half of back-to-back for the Seattle Kraken. I don't know. Even if the Vancouver Canucks have a great matchup tonight, I'm probably not going to go hard on them because last night I did that in a great matchup for Nashville, and it went really poorly. So let's get into tonight's slate. We've got the Florida Panthers hosting the New York Rangers in the Florida Classic. The Panthers are minus 139 home favorites, 126 road dogs for the Rangers, 3.1 implied total for the Panthers. They're very good, 5v5 offense, but the Rangers have been very stifling defensively as of late. Both teams pretty good on the power play. The Rangers still struggling to get any offense going whatsoever, but that isn't stopping their top line from grading out as the number one line to target tonight, which is interesting, obviously, given their struggles this season. But Panarin, $7,600, Zibanejad at $6,200, and Will Cooley at $4,100. They come in at 17,900. So we'll start with them. Matchup wise, it is pretty good. They're going to see almost an even split here, about 40-60 split here between the first and second line of the Florida Panthers. The first line, the Lundell line, very, very good defensively. The second line, not so good defensively. They play very, very high event hockey. So I do feel like the Panthers tend to switch things up here a little bit. Sometimes it's like full hard match with the Lundell line. Other times the Bennett line spends a little bit more time against the opposition's top line. So I do have some concerns about New York, one, that they're going to kind of go with this full Lundell route. Right now, we've got it projected more Bennett versus that line, Lundell versus the second line. So if that's the case, for New York one, will be in a really nice spot tonight. They got the best underlying metrics of the top 9, at least here for the New York Rangers. If it flips and it ends up being a lot of New York too, I think they're kind of in an interesting value spot tonight with Perreault at just $3K and Lafreniere at just $3,500. Lafreniere, for kind of all of his issues this season and lack of scoring, it still grades out really well tonight in terms of the raw projections. He is towards the top 10 in terms of value forwards tonight at $3,500. It is drawing a decent chunk of ownership, basically the what is this, the 14th highest owned forward on the slate. So I think the second line represents a little bit of value in this one. I believe I read today, and Zach, maybe you know this for sure, but I feel like the Rangers have never lost an outdoor game. But does this even classify? Like, can we put any stock into that at all? I think they're 5-0 in outdoor games, if I recall correctly. But let's start with the Rangers. Zach, where are you coming in here? Obviously, matchup is kind of dependent here, and it's hard to trust the Rangers to really generate offense on a consistent basis.
Yeah, and that just continues to be the issue with this New York Rangers team, right? I mean, I think there's some interesting spots in here. Like I like the idea of getting somebody whoever is going up against that Florida 2 line, but again, not 100% sure on that spot. I think there's still reason to kind of get to this top line of the Rangers. Artemi Panarin continuing to just be an absolute monster this season. His floor has been tremendous over these last 10 games here, and over his last 20 games played, 9.4 shots on goal per hour. He's almost the only guy who really wants to shoot the puck for this New York Rangers team right now. So I love the idea of getting to him here tonight. Not super high owned either. It's just like 12% for him, which actually feels fairly low considering it's a 3-game slate here. But, he's had success against the Panthers, 8 goals, 31 points in 23 games going up against them in his career. Zibanejad, just under a point per game player against them as well. So I've got some interest in getting there for sure. I don't know how much I'm going to get down to this second line of the Rangers here. I do agree. I think that Perreault is an interesting option at 3K there. There's just not been a whole lot of shot volume from him, but he is finding ways to put up some points through some assists here as well. So, if the Rangers second line can find a way onto the board, I don't mind that spot either. Florida 2 continue to just be a powerhouse offensively, right? I think they're going to be a line that's fairly hard to ignore here on this slate as a whole. I feel better about Sam Bennett and Brad Marchand individually than I do Carter Verhaeghe, who, as I mentioned a couple of days ago, has kind of been killing my fantasy team this season. His floor has just been, pretty much non-existent over these last 10 games here. So he's really kind of quieted down. So I feel better about, going with the Bennett Marchand mini stack there. But of course, I'm not opposed to having some Verhaeghe there. Not as good of a power play matchup tonight for the Florida Panthers, but it still does rank 3rd overall on this slate tonight.
Yeah, and I just went back and looked at the matchups in the last 5 games for the Panthers, and it has been primarily the Bennett line going up against the opposition's top line. Again, it's going to be a fairly even split as you see here. Like there is going to be quite a bit of that Lundell line as well. So feel pretty confident in these matchups, and yeah, I think New York 1 is definitely the line to target here. And I think, like you said, kind of Panarin feels like the best just play overall. Him and Fox mini stacks maybe a little bit. Fox looked really good in his return to the lineup. Panarin feels like the best play. And then I don't mind full stacking New York 1, but like Zibanejad's shot volume has just completely disappeared. I guess I shouldn't say it has disappeared because let me pull up the numbers here. He's actually shooting the puck a ton. The guy just cannot hit the net like at all. So in his last, like this is actually insane. In his last 5 games, he has 1 shot on goal. In that time, he has 16 shot attempts. Like just cannot find the net even. So that's kind of a weird thing. And he's not like he's very cheap. Like if he's going to go out there and not give you any shots at $6,200, it's not going to be the best play. So yeah, I don't mind the stop line. I think the matchup's good. They grade out best for a reason. And, the underlying metrics are still pretty decent. Not great, not terrible. But yeah, Florida 2, definitely the line that I'm targeting here from the Florida side of things. It's just matchup is obviously not great going up against that Panarin and Zibanejad line, who have very strong defensive metrics, but they've been basically matchup proof. They grade out really well. They're seeing a lot of ownership, and I think that they're super interesting. I like Reinhart. I don't really like getting to this whole top line. I don't think they've done a ton offensively, and like the underlying metrics are just kind of meh. But this third line, I think, represents a really interesting value option tonight. Samoskevich at 3,400 and Rodriguez at 3,800 specifically. Rodriguez was bumped up to the top power play unit in place of Samoskevich in their last game. I believe he played 18 minutes in that game, and I think he had 5 shots or 5 shot attempts. Let me just double check my numbers here. Just going off pure vibes right now. So he had 2 shots on goal, but 5 shot attempts in that game, playing 18:45. So he gets to bump up to that top power play unit. I think obviously it's always a little trickier to find quality value centers, and I think he's one of the better options tonight. So him and Samoskevich in a mini stack, I think, is pretty viable tonight if you're looking for some value as well. Any final thoughts on this game before we get to game number 2?
No, I think we're good to move it along here.
Let's get to Anaheim and Minnesota. So obviously a bit of an island game here with it being the Winter Classics. These next 2 games don't start until 10:30. Take it away, Zach.
Yeah, interesting game here tonight between the Anaheim Ducks, who are hosting the Minnesota Wild. Wild come in as the road favorites, minus 124 on the money line tonight. 3.3 implied total for them, 3.0 for the Anaheim Ducks as well. Pulling up the line stacks here tonight. Minnesota won, grading out as the best line to target in this game here. Also second overall in the charts tonight. They're probably one of the higher owned lines here, I think, on this slate, projecting for about 17.5% ownership. Minnesota 2, close behind. Joel Eriksson, Matt Boldy, Marcus Johansson grading out fourth overall in the charts tonight. Anaheim 3, grading out pretty well here tonight, coming in sixth overall. And then that first and second line coming in at 10th and 12th overall. This game is pretty interesting to me. Highest pace score of the night with a massive 105 pace score. This is one of the higher pace scores that I can recall seeing as long as you've been doing these charts here. And it seems like a great spot, at least matchup wise, for this Anaheim 2 line. They're drawing the best matchup here in this game tonight. A 91.3 matchup score, spending 57% of their ice time going up against that third line for the Minnesota Wild, which is their weakest line defensively. Granted, not a lot of goals against there, and thanks to the great goaltending that the Wild have this year, but boy, they give up a lot of quality, and this does seem like a bit of a smash spot here for this second line. Mason McTavish, Beckett Seneke, and Chris Kreider. This seems like a really interesting spot for them. They're pretty low owned, coming in just 12% here tonight. I feel better about McTavish and Seneke than I do Kreider there on that line. For the Minnesota Wild matchups here tonight, solid matchups for that first line and for that third line. The second line draws the worst matchup of the Wild side of things, spending 64% of their ice time going up against Anaheim 1, which is the Ducks' best line defensively. Just 1.7 goals against per hour of ice time. They've been really solid here as of late defensively. I don't think that a poor matchup score is necessarily going to scare a lot of people off of Minnesota 2 here, because they are still drawing 16% ownership, and this does still feel like a solid spot for them. Obviously, the full correlation on that top power, almost full correlation on that top power play unit with Matt Boldy and Eriksson Ek there. But the Wild don't really have a great power play this season, at least from an underlying numbers perspective. They have the best ranked power play from percentage on this slate tonight at 22.6%, but not a great matchup here tonight, even though the Ducks are a fairly undisciplined team. This seems like an interesting game for sure, man. I think there's a lot of different spots that you can kind of get to here. Where are you kind of coming in on this game tonight, Brock?
Yeah, definitely. I feel like, if the ice is bad in that first game and then you've got Seattle and Vancouver, like there's really no reason not to get to this game a ton tonight. It feels by far the best in game environment. I mean, we know that the Ducks struggle defensively. They're the 30th ranked 5v5 xGA in the weighted team ratings. The Wild seem to have cleaned things up, at least at 5v5. The penalty kill is still a bit of a nightmare, but that doesn't seem to pose much of a problem tonight, with the Ducks power play being as poor as it has been, especially lately. I mean, it is just plummeting. I think it's interesting with Cutter and Leo together. They're very expensive, though. I don't know how much I'm going to get there. I feel much better about the Minnesota Wild side of this game. The second line, Chris Kreider is goalless in his last 14 games and has just 1 assist in his last 11. He's still $5,300. We always talk about it does feel a little dicey even playing Seneca and McTavish when they're with Cutter, because like McTavish's ice time randomly gets cut. I think they're still a pretty good value option. They're both on the top power play unit in what is a good power play matchup if they can kind of get it going, which they haven't. But I think I do feel better kind of about that little mini stack. Maybe get some Lacombe in there. I think this third line is really interesting. They grade out phenomenal, and they're really cheap. I guess not really cheap, but 12,800 if you want to include Nesterenko. If you want to go with just Granlund and Terry, Granlund's been really good for this club. Pretty good matchup, but the underlying metrics here are what really stand out. Very, very good metrics here for this third line. Everybody kind of playing the same amount of ice time. So yeah, I think there is some reasonable options here within the Anaheim Ducks. Like I think that Anaheim 2, we'll start with them, is in a good spot to succeed. I just don't know if they're going to take advantage of it. Anaheim 1, I think, is the highest upside play, obviously, but they're super expensive, at least Cutter and Carlson. Obviously, Killorn looks like a nice value spot option at 2,500, but it's a pretty penny to pay for a fairly difficult matchup here. And then Anaheim 3, I think, is kind of like the sneakiest option. The underlying metrics are really good. Terry and Granlund have both had pretty good years, so I think that that's an interesting little pivot option in deep tournaments if you want to get off some of the the high ownership that you're going to get from the first and second line. But again, most of my interest coming in on the Wild in this game. The Ducks just are not good defensively at all. And I was trying to look it up here. So Quinn Hughes was acquired on December 12th, and I was hoping you would talk for like another 30 seconds, but I didn't get that, so that's fine. Since they've acquired Quinn Hughes, the Minnesota Wild power play during that stretch is tied for 6th in the NHL, converting at 26.9%. So that power play has definitely improved, 6th best in the league since Quinn Hughes arrived. And yeah, they draw a pretty nice power play matchup against the Ducks team that is very undisciplined. I love this Wild power play tonight. Obviously, if you're looking at just 5v5 stacks, the top line grades out the best. They've got the much better matchup. I don't mind getting to Urov and Zuccarello. They're both super cheap. Cheap exposure to Kaprizov is always welcomed here. But really like the idea of getting Eriksson Ek, Boldy, and Kaprizov together, getting some power play correlation. I think both these lines can find some success today at 5v5 and on the power play, just given the defensive struggle of the Anaheim Ducks. Any thoughts here or any additional thoughts here before we move it along?
No, not really. Again, I do agree with you. Like, it feels like a bit of a dicier spot here for the Anaheim Ducks than it does for this Minnesota Wild side of things. So I'm going to be really curious to see the way this game kind of breaks down by the end of the night.
Kaprizov grades out with the number 1 projection tonight. Matt Boldy coming in at number 4. Joel Eriksson Ek 15th. So the projections really like Minnesota. As with the projections liking them comes high ownership. Kaprizov, Eriksson Ek, and Boldy each within the top 10 in terms of ownership. Matt Zuccarello up there as well. And yeah, like you can certainly include Matt Zuccarello. He's also on that top power play unit if you want to go that route as well. Lots of options here with the Minnesota Wild. They look to be in the best spot by a considerable margin tonight. Then we've got Vancouver hosting the Seattle Kraken. The Vancouver Canucks are minus 137. Let's take a look at their line combinations here because they do have some injuries. Connor Garland is not available. Marco Rossi is not available. So we're going to have some line shuffling. Linus Karlsson is going to move up to the top line. If you saw it earlier, I did a quick preview of ownership tonight in order of highest to lowest, and Vancouver 1 comes in as the highest owned line on the night, much like Nashville projected last night, because the matchup is the exact same tonight. They are going to spend a boatload of their ice time up against that Chandler Stevenson line. So is the Vancouver second line. And we all know, these Chandler Stevenson metrics just keep getting worse, somehow only giving up 1.9 goals against per 60. It's baffling. But yeah, the matchup here for both these top 2 lines for the Canucks, very, very good. Problem is the second line's offensive metrics are horrific. Not a whole lot better for Vancouver 1, but they are marginally better. They're at least generating chances with the limited amount of time that they actually have the puck. So yeah, I think like the chalk being here on Vancouver 1 feels tough. I felt much more secure and better about Nashville 1 in this spot yesterday, and they flopped. So now like 27% ownership on Pettersson and DeBrusk. I don't know. It just doesn't feel like good chalk at all. I do think, obviously, given the metrics here, like it would be weird for me to say that I love Nashville 1 and don't like Vancouver 1. I do like this spot. I just think they're a little bit more difficult to trust, and obviously Seattle can keep them off the board as they did with the Preds last night. So it does feel like pretty gross chalk. The second line is drawing a shitload of ownership too. Again, just feels like pretty dicey chalk here. And I don't know how much I'm really willing to get there. I think that there's a decent amount of value on the slate, and I'm going to try to jam in as much Minnesota as I can because this chalk is difficult to get to. They do draw the second best power play matchup, which also helps tonight. The power penalty kill for the Kraken continues to be an absolute nightmare. Pettersson, DeBrusk, both on that top unit together. Steve Williams still up there as well. Linus Karlsson's on the second unit, Phil Peronic. So that's that top line there. So yeah, I think Vancouver's in an okay enough spot. Just whether or not they can actually take advantage of it is kind of the question that we have here. And the offense certainly has been a little bit better as of late. 3-4-5, 2-3-3-3 in their last 7 games. So they've basically averaged north of 3 goals per game. They have been fairly productive since the Quinn Hughes trade. we'll see. On the Seattle side of things, I mean, it's kind of the same story, right? Like Eeli Tolvanen projects extremely well again. The underlying metrics for that line continue to be an absolute abomination. I think it's very unsustainable and very difficult to trust. That being said, the matchup here is pretty damn good. So I don't think I trust Chandler Stevenson very much, but I don't mind getting to a little bit of Tolvanen. But yet again, most of my interest, like it did last night, comes in on the top line of the Kraken. The matchup's much worse, but the offensive metrics are at least a little bit better. Jordan Eberle's been great. Beniers had a good game last night. Zach, you've always got the career numbers. I might be wrong here, but I feel like Beniers has good career numbers against the Canucks. Is that a true statement, or am I just straight up lying right now?
No, actually you're kind of on track here. 6 goals and 10 points in 13 games played. Okay. So he's been pretty solid against the Canucks in his career.
Not too bad. I felt like it was better, but yeah, so I think that's still the line that I feel the best about getting to with Seattle. I think they're the easiest to trust. And I also think this third line's somewhat interesting. The offensive metrics for them are actually kind of like the best that the Kraken have. Matchup wise, it's not very good, but they're super cheap. With Berkeley Cat, Shane Wright, and then obviously Jared McCann there is the real weapon. So I don't mind getting this third line a little bit as well. You take a look here. They have the number 1 power play matchup on the slate. And I think getting to this Seattle power play unit is pretty interesting tonight. So you've got Eberle and you got Beniers, and then you've got the second line, and then you got Vince Dunn. So I don't mind getting to, those kind of power play stacks here with Eberle, Beniers, Dunn, Tolvanen, maybe Stevenson and Dunn, but mostly Tolvanen and Dunn. And then again, you got McCann, you got Cat and Wright and Riker Evans. Really, really cheap options here. I don't mind trying to pair them with like some Minnesota tonight and hoping you can catch some fire there with that third line of the Kraken. And the real reason I want to get to the Kraken a little bit tonight is when you take a look at the goalies tonight, Thatcher Demko does project to be the best goalie. I think he's a good play. Don't get me wrong, but he's also by far and away, it's not far and away, but by far the highest owned goalie on the slate here, tied with Igor Shesterkin. And then there's just kind of everybody else because they're the 2 cheapest options basically there. So with that chalk, I imagine that there's going to be a little bit more ownership that comes in on Demko than Shesterkin. And I think Seattle can be a really interesting, they're not trying a ton of ownership, real kind of interesting chalk buster between the pipes there tonight. It'd be a nice leverage play. So yeah, I kind of want to get to some Seattle tonight. I don't feel the greatest about it, but I think they're in an okay enough spot, especially with that power play matchup. How about you, Zach?
Yeah, I agree with you, man. I got some interest in getting to Seattle here tonight. I prefer the Seattle side of things more than I do this Canucks side of things. Vancouver 1 has been really bad lately. There is no other way to sugarcoat it. If you just look at the DK averages for points per game from this top line, they grade out with the 16th most points per game. The only lines that are below them are Vancouver 2 and all of the 4th lines for the teams that are playing tonight. In terms of the average floor for Vancouver 1, the only lines that are lower are all of the 4th lines. Like there's just been no floor from these guys and no ceiling whatsoever to speak of. I think Jake DeBrusk is the most interesting of the 3 up there on that top line. He's really the only guy that's been doing anything lately, and it's been just kind of through some shot volume here. He's generating a lot of quality looks, 1.5 individual expected goals per hour, scoring just half a goal per hour of ice time, though, over his last 20 games. I don't mind the Linus Karlsson play at $2,900 there. I can get behind that a little bit as well. Vancouver 2, I think, is kind of interesting because they have a 100% matchup score, but I don't know if they're really going to be able to do anything. Again, like you said, Nashville felt like was in such a better spot last night and weren't able to do anything. So as it usually is the case for me with the Vancouver Canucks, I'm going to be coming in well under the field on them here tonight. There's no way I can get up to 15% ownership on that second line or 20% ownership up there on that top line. I do think Seattle is an interesting option for sure. I'm willing to go back to the well here on Seattle too with Eeli Tolvanen and Chandler Stevenson. A little more apprehensive about Stevenson than I am with Tolvanen, whose shot volume and block volume has been just tremendous as of late here. So I've got some interest there for sure. This top line, Beniers and Eberle, Eberle continuing to be red hot right now. I like the look of getting up to these guys here as well. But boy, this Vancouver chalk feels really gross, which surely means that they're about to absolutely nuke this slate tonight, because that's probably just how my luck has been paying off lately.
Yeah, so these two teams just met a couple of days ago, December 29th. It was a 3-2 shootout win for the Vancouver Canucks in that one. Kevin Lankinen stood on his head, made 37 stops. So the Kraken were able to carry play that night. I imagine that could be a similar story tonight. But for the Canucks, it was Linus Karlsson with a goal, Elias Pettersson with a goal. So I think that's probably part of the reason why people are probably getting to that top line tonight. Vander Kane, Ogren, and Tom Willander each had assists for the Seattle Kraken. It was Jared McCann and Ryan Winterton getting on the board there. It was Vince Dunn, Jordan Eberle, and Jacob Melanson picking up the helpers, as well as Joey Decourt. So, yeah, it was a pretty low event game there, which is what I kind of anticipated being tonight. If you want to put any stock into last year, there was a 5-0 Seattle win, a 6-3 Seattle win, a 4-3 Vancouver shootout win, and a 5-4 Seattle overtime win. So very high scoring games in the past. I don't think that this kind of iteration of these two teams is really built for high event hockey, but we shall see. Maybe the trend continues. This game will be more fun than it suggests. They both certainly are ass defensively and on the PK. So maybe it's just a power play fest tonight. Who knows? Any final thoughts before we get to the goalies and defensemen here?
No, let's talk about some blue liners.
How bad will the ice be at the Winter Classic? Currently, it's mostly sunny and 20 degrees Celsius. Yeah, like they've played it outside in warm weather before, and I can't. It's been a while. I can't recall what the ice was like. I can't imagine it's going to be great, but the technology now, like I don't think it's going to be a disaster by any means. The quote from let me see if I can find the quote here from Will Cooley yesterday. He said it was pretty bad and pretty slow. So that does obviously, I think that you have to factor that in a little bit. But I don't imagine, I feel like they'll probably get it dialed in a little bit better than it was maybe yesterday. Okay, let's get to the defenseman. Filip Hronek grades out as the #1 value option tonight, playing north of 25 minutes. He also projects for the highest ownership on tonight's slate. So I like Hronek a lot. I like Vince Dunn again tonight. I think he's a great play. At 5,200, Tom Willander here grades out really well. His offense has perked up a little bit as of late as well. I think there's some other pretty decent cheap value options here. Just trying to look at the last 10 games and some of the guys who have been doing a lot of shit. Jamie Alexiak at minimum price, Ian Moore, Jared Spurgeon, Pavel Mitnikov, Adam Larson among the top 5 in terms of doing shit per dollar. So those are kind of like your real, dive deep, dumpster diving defensemen. In terms of some of the pay up options, though, like Quinn Hughes, I think is I'm going to be over the field on Quinn Hughes if he comes in at 18%. Probably going to come in over the field on Vince Dunn as well if he's just going to see 7% ownership tonight. Lacombe and Fox, I think, are pretty good plays again. Both have played pretty well. The price tags are a little hefty for the situation they're in, so I'd rather get to Hughes and Dunn. Who are you looking at tonight?
Yeah, I love some of these cheaper defensemen, man. I mean, Ian Moore, Tyler Myers, Tom Willander, these guys look like solid plays here tonight. Jamie Alexiak, I'd put him in that category too. I think it's a bit of a pay down night here on the blue line for me at the very least. That being said, I also think that there's some fine pay up options here too, like Vince Dunn, Quinn Hughes, Adam Fox. I'm going to be getting some ownership up there on some of these guys. So for me, I think I'm kind of going the stars and scrubs route here. Looking for some of these either higher priced guys or some of these cheaper guys on this slate.
All right, let's get to our daily face-off head-to-head.
Please?
Pardon me?
Do you want to talk about goalies first?
Oh, shit. Yeah, I should. Let's talk about goalies. You guys want to talk about goalies? Let's talk about goalies. Thatcher Demko grades as the #1 goalie to target here, followed by Philip Gustafsson. Demko, obviously $7,200 is pretty easy to click on if that ends up being a lower scoring game. And obviously, like Thatcher Demko has played extremely well as of late. And I just mentioned, I mean, Kevin Lankinen stopped 37 of 38 shots the other night. And if Demko sees anything close to that volume, he's going to be, a great play tonight. He came back and won, 3 in a row. Yeah, his first 4 games, he had a 943 save percentage. He has hit the skids a little bit against the Flyers, the Sharks, and the Flyers. So they seem to have his number. 876 save percentage in his last 3 games. So 907 overall since returning to the lineup in his last 7. He's been pretty good. Some really good, some really bad. But again, if he sees 39 shots like the Canucks gave up the other night, the volume is going to be massive. At $7,200, he's a great play. Gustafsson, I think I really like here tonight. I think Anaheim's going to draw still, plenty of ownership. And I do think this is a game to Minnesota Wild go out and win. And I think it could be like in a 5-2 type fashion where Gustafsson ends up being a good play. You seem to like the Rangers a little bit more than I do tonight. I like Bobrovsky quite a bit. I think he's in a good spot. And maybe a little bit of Igor, like obviously at that ownership at that price point. I think, if it is a lower scoring game because of the ice, Igor can be fine. I have a little bit less interest here in Lucas Dostal, but Joey Decord looks like a decent chalk busting option tonight at 8K. A little bit of a hefty price tag, but I mean, if that much ownership's coming in on Vancouver and we don't feel very good about it, Joey Decord obviously feels like a good leverage play, especially as the lowest owned goalie of the night. So as always is the case here with these small slates, I think kind of spreading your ownership out is smart, but I feel like Demko, Gustafsson, Bobrovsky are my 3 favorites. But I certainly have no problem getting to Decord. He's up 22 of 24 in that shootout loss to the Canucks the other day, and he has been absolutely spectacular as of late. 3-2-1 in his last 6 with a 932 save percentage, giving up just a shade over 2 goals per game. So really interesting chalk busting option there tonight.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, I agree with you on Thatcher Demko. I think he's my favorite goalie play of the night here. I think one thing that, and I'll talk about this a little bit more later with lineup construction, don't be afraid to get a little bit weird on this slate here tonight. You'll see it in my daily face-off head-to-head, and you'll know what I'm talking about. I think Philip Gustafsson is a more than fine play at $8,200. His numbers against the Ducks are unreal. 7 games played, 5 wins, a shutout, 1.85 goals against average, 936 save percentage. He's a guy that I'll be getting to here tonight for sure. Bobrovsky, Shesterkin, I'm not as keen on it. It feels like it could be, a little bit of a lower event game as far as I'm concerned here. So a little bit of volume concerns there for me and that spot tonight. I think Decord's a great play at DK. He looks to be really low owned, coming in as the lowest owned goalie on this slate here tonight. And like we talked about, like, real good chalk busting potential there. And I also think that Lucas Dostal is an interesting chalk busting option here on this slate as well tonight.
Yeah, he's just not played well. That's my only concern with him. Like, it's obviously he just doesn't seem to be the same guy that we could kind of reliably go to just stand on his head. Despite the lack of quality defense in front of him. I mean, his last since the middle of November, 868 save percentage in his last 13 games. In his last 3 games against the Kings, the Sharks, and the Lightning, and a 794 save percentage. So I just feel less comfortable than I should, because he's given us plenty to like in the past, but just really tough recent stretch.
Yeah, 100%. It has been pretty tough sledding for him for sure as of late. The one thing that I will say, 917 save percentage in 6 games played against the Wild in his career. Granted, only 1 win and 3 goals against average there, but he has put up some decent numbers in the past, at least from a save percentage perspective against Minnesota.
Now let's get to our daily face-off, the head-to-head lineup challenge. Yesterday was a nightmare. Zach won with a terrible score, but it was a win nonetheless. So it closes the gap a little bit, 11-10. Zach, who you got in your lineup tonight?
Yeah, thanks for not mentioning what my actual score was last night. That was really, really kind of you.
I would never, because then it would just expose how bad mine was.
Yeah, it was pretty rough across the board there. But I got a little bit weird here tonight. I had one lineup and then I decided to change it at the last second to another one. So surely that first lineup is going to end up popping off here tonight. But I got a New York Rangers, mini stack on that top line, Zibanejad and Panarin. Panarin feels like kind of a lock play for me here tonight. Again, the shot volume that he's had has been tremendous for the Rangers. A little bit of correlation with Zibanejad there as well. Got Brad Marchand and Seth Jones, a little power play 1 mini stack. Obviously, Marchand, tremendous season that he's been having. In the Ducks we trust, we're going with a little Mason McTavish, Beckett Seneke mini stack here as well tonight. Ian Moore correlating with them as well. on the Duck side of things. And then this is where I got a little bit weird with my lineup tonight. I'm playing Thatcher Demko and Eli Tolvanen going up against him here tonight. The idea behind that for me is I love Thatcher Demko as a play at $7,200, top value here. And Eli Tolvanen has just been giving a really solid floor here as of late. Tons of shot volume, lots of block volume. If he manages to score one on Demko, it's not entirely going to kill me tonight. But the hopes there is that Tolvanen has another really solid floor game and Demko's able to pull out a W.
With the full Minnesota fade, I'm a little surprised you didn't put the boy Joey Decord, or not Joey Decord, Lucas Dostal in there. But I would have liked it just because I went full Minnesota. Eriksson, Boldy, Kaprizov, and Hughes. Obviously, it's something you can do tonight. You got to get pretty punty with the rest of your lineup. And I ended up going with the mini stack of Rodriguez and Samoskevich there. And then just had no money left over. So Willander and Linus Karlsson, I think obviously Karlsson being on that top line is going to afford him a couple extra minutes tonight. As I said, he just scored against Seattle. So don't mind getting to a little bit of Vancouver tonight, just without kind of overexposing myself to full stacks. I think is probably the route that I'm going to go. I don't mind some of their value and their plays. And as I mentioned, Willander, pretty solid numbers as of late. I mean, in terms of just kind of a floor, he's been okay, not great. At $2,500, I feel okay with it. And then I went with Bobrovsky. I built my lineup first. I was the first one to drop one in here, and I didn't know you were going to go with the Rangers. Now I feel even better. So let's get to Brock lineup. Probably projects 20 points more, but will somehow end up losing. Yeah, I think that's probably fair. Let's get to tonight's hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in tonight's hat trick pick challenge, we had another one last night. Did anybody pick Matthews?
Good question. Didn't even look.
It was probably you. You probably just picked him again, and we just didn't even know. I don't think anyone picked. I don't even think. Let me look. Let me see if I can pull it up here. We got Stamkos, Parker Witherspoon, Forsberg, Jason Robertson. Oh, Marsharks picked him. Congratulations, Marsharks. Gets a $25 gift card to Nation Gear. Longtime viewer, Marsharks, our friend. AM34 Hattie. So, yeah, you guys go back to back. There he is. I did. Attaboy. Yeah, Marsharks and Zach going back to back Hattie picks. So we'll get you the $25 gift card to Nation Gear. Marsharks, let's get tonight's hat trick pick challenge. If you want to participate in tonight's hat trick challenge like Marsharks did yesterday, you can win $25 gift card to Nation Gear. And if a player scores a hat trick that nobody picked, we'll raffle it off to anybody who submitted a pick. But Marsharks got it done last night. So back-to-back hat tricks, back-to-back successful picks on the show. Zach, who are you going with tonight?
Kirill Kaprizov.
Ooh, very nice. I'm going to stick in the same game. I'm going to go Matt Boldy to stay just scorching hot. Thank you guys so much for tuning in to another week of the show. Smash that like button, hit the subscribe button so you never miss an episode. As always, shout out to our friends at Roto Grinders for providing projected ownership for today's show. If you want to get $20 off your first month of Roto Grinders Premium, take everything you learned in today's show, put it in their lineup optimizer. You can do so by clicking the link in the description of the video on YouTube. Also, in that description is a link to 20% off your first month of Action Network Premium and the link to the DFS Discord if you want to join that. That's where I post these charts. So if you want to get access to these charts, an hour before the show or before the show starts, join the Discord. That's where we post them. And do all those things. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you back here on Monday. Enjoy the Florida Classic. We'll see you back here in a couple days' time. I'm Brock Seguin. As always, we got Zach Laing. Zach, any final words for you, buddy?
Cheers.